You can ask questions anytime. I just want this to be kind of a discussion. So don't wait till the end. If there's something you want to ask me, just go ahead. Let me see. A couple terms, if you hear people talking about backpacking, sometimes you hear people talk about like ultralight backpackers. I'm not an ultralight backpacker by any means. That just means it's kind of like a side hobby. They have a quest to be as light as possible, whether it be just to see how light they can go, or they might be a super high mileage hiker, and having a 10-pound pack is really an advantage when you're doing 20 plus miles a day. Me, I'm kind of in between. I really enjoy the camping aspect once I get to camp more than the hiking's fun and everything, but I do enjoy the camping also. So I bring some luxury items along to be more comfortable in camping. Another term maybe is like a thru hiker, if you've ever heard that. It's someone who hikes usually a long trail all the way through its entirety in one hike. And it might take a month, it might take 6 months. I've never done that. If my knees hold up when I get, when I'm at retirement age, maybe that's something I'll do. I made the mistake of getting a career, and then who can take 6 months off work once you start working. So, a section hiker, that's more like a weekend warrior. You might pick out a long trail like the Appalachian Trail and hike a section at a time, and maybe over 20 years you might accomplish the whole thing. And that's a little bit easier for someone to digest. A weekend warrior is someone like what I do. It's just, if you have a spare weekend, you might get out here to Shawnee or Red River Gorge in Kentucky, which is a fabulous place. It's about 2 hours away. So to get started, another term you'll hear sometimes, it's around backpacking circles. It's called the Big Three. The Big Three is, it refers to your gear. And it means the big 3 important items that, usually the most costly items and important items. Everything else is just detailed after that. The number one, the first big 3 I want to go over is of course, your pack. I started out with a external frame here, which is really popular in the 70s. And it's more popular with people who carry very heavy loadouts, like hunters, wintertime camping where you're going to have more clothing. It's got a hardened frame. Sometimes it's made of aluminum. Sometimes it's made out of like a composite like this. The advantages to one of these are, like I said, it's made to carry really heavy loads, so it's very rigid. It's also very big. You can carry your sleeping bag in an external pocket down here, like an external bag, so it does not take up room inside the pack. One of the down things with this is this pack alone weighs about 5 pounds empty. Some people's maximum, everything they take is 10 pounds, so you can imagine they would never use a pack like this. But they are pretty comfortable. It keeps the weight off of your back with this, so it allows airflow through. So the ventilation keeps your sweating and everything, even though you've got a heavy pack. One of the most popular packs nowadays is like this one. It's called an internal frame pack. And they sell these by the number of liters of volume that they run. This one, I believe, is a 55 liter, which is about middle of the road. You can get a 70 liter if it's a wintertime pack or whatever. These aren't made to carry quite as heavy as this unless you get a very big one. You can, of course, you can get them smaller than that. This has a aluminum internal frame that sits inside the pack, which maintains the structure of the pack. This one's by a company called ULA out of Utah. It's kind of a small, what they call a cottage vendor. They make them to order. This is their circuit model, which is about the middle volume pack. My brother has a own, which is a smaller version. He's a smaller guy, all his computers small. But this was mine. Nowadays, with this ultralight craze, and there's the technology has really made a lot of items become lighter and smaller in volume. There's several companies making frameless packs, which are just like what they say. They don't have a frame at all. Those packs usually weigh 15 ounces, just packed alone. They're ultralight. They're not as durable. They're made to carry light loads less than 15 pounds. All the weights are usually on your shoulder straps with those. There's usually no weight belt to be had. So they are for the fastest ultralight people that are just moving through the woods. But 99% of people you see nowadays would probably have one of these internal frames. I'll get a little bit into like pack fitment here. Like I said, I'm no expert on this, but this is kind of what I do. First of all, this is your hip belt here. Shoulder straps, of course. These are called load lifters. And the load lifters, they keep the pack kind of vertical against your back. A lot of times, especially when you put a lot of weight on your hips, the pack will want to lean back, and this one kind of straightens it up. So it keeps the weight closer to your center of gravity. And then the last main part is your sternum strap here. So what I usually do, my packs usually weigh around 25 pounds with everything in it. Another term you'll hear is base weight, which means like what someone's loadout weighs with no water, no food, no fuel, anything that's consumable. I don't really go by that because I've never carried a pack that does not have water, food, or fuel in it. So to me, it doesn't make much sense.
So Nathan, your 25 pounds has your water in it?
That's everything.
Real? Okay.
I mean, that's, sometimes if it's winter time, of course I'm going to have more clothing. Sometimes I'll have a bigger, more insulation for my bigger top quilt or bottom quilt, so it'll up my weight, maybe sometimes around 30 pounds. What I usually do, to get this, sorry, just without this vest on, I kind of lean forward, get the weight off my shoulders, and I snap my hip back. And then I tighten it up. And then when you lean back, you notice that a lot of it is on your hips. You want it up on that crown, I can't remember what it's called, the iliac crest maybe. And then, usually I'll put about 80% of the weight on my hips. And then I'll grab these straps and I'll pull down on my shoulder straps so they're pretty tight. And then if you have to, if your pack's leaning back, these are already adjusted for me, you adjust your load lifters to pull the back up. Now, you can carry weight on your hips a lot longer because that more of the weight's closer to your center of gravity and it's not pushing down on your shoulders. And that seems like it helps a lot. Now, if you're hiking very far, you can always loosen up this belt for a while, carry more on your shoulders for a while, give your hips a break. And then, usually the last part is the sternum strap. I like to snug it up, but if you tighten it up so much that it starts to pull these away from your shoulders, it's probably a little too tight. You want your shoulder strap to lay flat. So if it starts to curl up, you usually have the sternum strap too tight. So there any more questions on packs at all? Another thing about the pack is, like I mentioned before, the big three is where usually you spend the most money. If I was new and getting into this, I would probably tend to put more of my money into insulation part as far as sleeping bags, quilts, than I would have packed right off the bat, if you have a budget. Some less expensive packs are some of them are very good. So I would tend to put more money in my insulation at first. And then, if you want to upgrade to a better pack later on, it's fine.
You mentioned one of the newer packs or it's not the frames inside. What's the advantage? Do you have a recommendation?
They're lighter. This pack weighs, like I mentioned, this pack's 5 pounds. I think this one weighs about 1.5 or 1 3/4 pound empty. So they're like a narrower. I find getting through the woods, like if I go down a Red River Gorge where I'm like climbing through stuff, I feel it better than this thing. I feel like I can't fit through a doorway. So you got some weight savings. You kind of feel faster and more agile with it. That's what I think. Okay, then number 2 of the big 3 is your insulation. And when I say insulation, I mean sleeping bag, which is like the most popular. They've been around forever. With the sleeping bag, you got to look for like synthetic insulation is probably the most popular. Then you have what they call down, which is the down feathers or goose feathers. They haven't really been able to replicate the performance of down as far as its ability to compress and its insulation ability. They're getting really close with synthetics, but they still haven't got there yet. Down it's expensive. Is another thing. It's kind of finicky. When it comes to wet weather, if you're out in the rain and your down will get wet, it can plump up and lose a lot of its insulated ability. So you really have to be careful how you pack it. Make sure it doesn't get wet because you could die. You get hypothermia. Synthetics, on the other hand, a lot of them will retain like a certain percentage of their insulation even if they are wet. So and you don't have to down. You're not supposed to store it in the compressed state for very long. So when you're home, you're supposed to hang them up, put them in like a pillowcase or something where they can kind of fluff out. Each one of them individual feathers, they smash down when you compress it. And I believe if you leave it that way, it can reduce its performance. So, I grew up using sleeping bags and everything, and now I kind of switched to the newest thing, which is like they call top quilts and under quilts, because I sleep in a hammock most of the time. I still use a tent, like if I'm on a bike trip that I might not be close to trees, I'll still take a tent sometimes. So my insulation, like this right here, is a bottom quilt for a hammock. And inside a hammock, of course, your weight is supported by the hammock itself. So if you use a sleeping bag inside that, or if you use it on the ground, the insulation that's up against your back is going to get smashed. And when it's smashed, it is no good. So that's where you get cold. With an underquilt, all your weight's supported by the hammock. So then this is held up with an elastic suspension against your back. And you can see that it's lofty, and that's how you can stay warm within. The same thing with the top quilt in here. I'll show you another example. This is where I keep mine. It's a waterproof compression sack. It really can smash down pretty small. Like I said, you don't want to keep them in one of these for very long, if you have them. another bottom quilt for hammock camping. It's what they call a 3/4. So it's more for warmer weather. This is a full length. This is 3/4. It only goes about here. So usually your feet are inside the foot box of the top quilt. So you really don't need a whole lot more insulation here unless it's super cold outside. Which, this is kind of a little niche object, and if you're tent camping, this is irrelevant. But this is a top quilt which can be used with tent campers or hammock campers. And in a quest to save weight, they kind of took away that insulation from the back of the sleeping bag. It usually gets smashed down and is no good. So being down, this one smashes down really small. It still has what they call a foot box for your feet to get inside. And then you just unsnap the top and you just lay it over you like a blanket, and then you can kind of tuck it in. And this one right here is good for down to 20 degrees. I've slept 15 probably with it pretty comfortable. That's a top quilt. These, like I said, down is pretty expensive, but a lot of things you'll run into backpacking besides the weight issue is volume issue. You'll just run out of space in the pack. And that's what down is really good for, is pressing down to the small top.
Is down compressed more than synthetic wood?
Yeah. There is a few synthetics nowadays that are really compressive. Not quite to the extent that down is, but they're getting closer. I just made a 0 degree synthetic underquilt this winter for myself, and it has an insulation called Climate Shield, a 10-ounce version. It lofts up really thick, and it actually compresses really well. And so it's kind of expensive itself too. So they're continuously working on that stuff. So they're not there yet, but
I'm truly amazed that you got both those pieces out of that little stuff side.
that's what
I mean, I couldn't believe it when the second piece came out, to be honest.
The longer you sit here, like it usually takes down about 20 minutes to kind of fluff that. And then that's why if you get into camp, after you set up, you want to go ahead and get your quilts out, let them start fluffing up. And the more loft they have, the better the insulation is. That's what you want, is trapped airspace because of the loft.
And when you mention temperatures, like things go down like 0 degrees, does that mean like you won't die, or like you'll stay comfortable?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
That's very good question.
Wendy can attest to this. A lot of sleeping bags, and especially like low-end ones, they rate their stuff, you'll get a 30 degree. That means you will be alive in the morning. You won't be happy. Like this one here says, comfort, 53 degrees. The extreme limit is 26, and the actual limit is 44. So that's saying at 26, you might be alive in the morning. At 53, you're probably going to be fine. So that's what you have to look at. A lot of them will just have one reading. It'll say 30 degrees. That means you'll be alive at 30 degrees, you won't be happy. You can kind of tell by the weight and the size of it, especially if it's synthetic and it's really, really small. They sold these ones at Walmart for a while, and they're a synthetic bag, and they were a really good deal, and they're about this big, and they're great for summertime, but literally at 60 degrees, you're going to start getting cold with this bag. It's not too good to be true. So that's another thing you want to look at is survivability and comfort. You always look to see if it has a comfort rating. If it only has one rating, and it's a less expensive bag, then add 20 degrees. Okay, moving on. Well, another thing about your insulation is, the this stuff's expensive, so I always sleep. I try not to sleep with my skin against these things. I always wear like a long sleeve layer and a long bottom layer. Because your oils and your dirt stuff from hiking will migrate into the down, and down's very hard to run, and it also decreases the performance of it. So, in order to keep them, as long as possible, I always try to do that. In summertime, just get the lightest layers possible. Try to throw your quilt off of you if you get too hot. Another thing about hammock camping, which I can do a whole other class on hammocks, so I'm not even going to bring up a whole lot of stuff about it. But there's a lot of things. These right here are prone to, if you got to get the suspension set just right, because if not, you'll get a wind that blows up through the ends. You'll immediately, if it's 20 degrees out, you immediately know something's wrong with it. Moving on to shelters, which is the third big three item. We'll mention hammocks a little bit, which is kind of a newer thing. If you're new, I wouldn't really recommend a hammock unless you like to kind of do a little bit of research and a little bit of practice. The lay of the hammock, which has to do with your suspension, the angles of the suspension, will drastically change the way it feels. Also, selecting the right tree, because these, at 30-degree angle, these are like, even me, I say I weigh 180 pounds. Each side exerts like almost 400 pounds on a tree, with me just being 180 pounds because of the way they hang. Thank you. Better put them away. So tents, they've been around forever. That's where most people are going to go to. There's some new high-performance, fabrics out there nowadays, which are also very expensive, but they're super light. One of them's called dynamic composite fiber, and a lot of companies are all making tents out of this stuff now. It feels weird. It's kind of crinkly, but it's super light. A tent about that big would be like less than a pound with that stuff, but it's very expensive. So most people are, going to use. I think that's a two-person tent. That's Wendy's tent. Those are just fine. One thing I do for tents and tarps, I don't care what brand makes them, set them up in your yard, run a hose over them, because a lot of them will leak, even though they're brand new. So check all the seams on the fly, and you can use. I sew a lot of my own tarps, so I always have to treat them myself. They make a couple different seam sealants. This is a silicone. You can spray the complete inside. Test it on the thing first to make sure it's compatible with the fabric you have. So just test a little corner of your fly or something. This is a sprayable product. Then you can also get one that's a little thicker. It's got a brush. This one's kind of dry. But you can actually brush it on just on the seams, where this one's a little sloppy. A lot of these are made out of like sil nylon, which is like silicone impregnated. And when they sew them together, if they don't spray over those seams, rain can literally get through the holes where it's been sewn. So this some companies will treat theirs already. This is the same stuff. You could spray it on the seams. And if it's a very old tent, it breaks down over time.
Do you carry that with you in case you have a leak?
No, that should be like stuff that you do ahead of time. Yeah, that stuff takes a while to dry. Okay. It's got some fumes to it. So that's why I say set them up in your yard, put a sprinkler on, spray them with a hose, check the inside, because it's not fun to get out somewhere and then realize you have a leak. With a tent, if you can kind of like let it run down the side and then maybe sop it up with something, you can usually be okay. But if it makes the whole bottom fill up like a bathtub, it's just miserable.
So if you find that you do have leaks, are they gonna take it back?
Some companies could, yeah. I guess that's just depend on the warranty that you have. A lot of them, MSR is a very good company. I would trust that one, but I would still test it out first. It can be just a simple little pinhole too. And, they don't. I'm sure they don't torture test all of them. So it's just good practice and practice setting it up too. If you get into camp late, it's dark, and you have absolutely no idea how to set your tent up, it can be rough. It can be rough in wind, even if you do know how to set it. It took 3 of us to set that one up. Tents can also have condensation issues. If you get it, you're in there breathing all night long, you breathe out warm, moist air. The outside of the tent is cold. It's going to start raining. It's going to collect and start coming down the sides. Now, a lot of good quality tents like that one is all mesh on the inside. So hopefully, what will happen is that humid air will get through the mesh, collect on the rain line, drip down the rain line outside. Now, some of these super ultralight one-wall tents, they don't have that bug mesh on the inside, so they can be really bad about having condensation issues. They're just going to hit the main wall, run right down to where you're sleeping. With the hammock, I usually use a tarp. I'm not even going to try to set it up today. This is called a continuous ridge line that you set up to the tree also. The tarp will be strung off of this and then staked to the ground. I have different tarps for different needs. I have a very minimal one that only weighs about 6 ounces that if there's no chance of rain, I'll take it just in case. Sometimes I won't even deploy it. I'll just look at the stars. Then I have a kind of a medium one. And then I have a big winter tarp, which actually has doors that close at the end. It's almost like hanging inside its own tent. It keeps the wind out, but it's kind of heavy.
When you're saying hard, you probably not make what you pick up at the hardware store.
No,
Specific.
exactly. This one right here, this is a hex tarp. It's about, I think it's 11 foot by 10 foot, something like that. It's inside right now what they call, this is called a snake skin. I have no idea why it's called snake skin. But you can leave it, usually this thing's up in the air a little bit farther. You can leave it in this all the time, like if you're in camp, and if a rainstorm or something will come in, you can deploy it really quickly. All you have to do is just slide these down. Hey. The tarp is inside. Throw it over the top, and then stake these corners down to the ground. It's very quick. And then in the morning, all you have to do is kind of roll it up a little bit, pull these back over. Sometimes I use a snake skin, sometimes I don't. They're very nice for when you're just hanging out, but they're kind of weird to fold up inside of the backpack. This is that little tiny minimal tarp that I sewed. That I'll take in the summertime. And then I put a bunch of stuff inside here so the wind wouldn't be blowing this thing around too much. there's that big winter tarp with doors. I usually kind of sew these up in the winter time when nothing else is going on.
What was that, Nathan?
This is a winter tarp with doors on it. It's got closable doors, or you can stake the doors open on the ends. It's
Literally like putting your hammock inside a tent.
yeah.
Do you ever put two hammocks together?
Yeah,
inside?
a few times when my wife's went, sometimes we'll share like one tree and then two trees on this side, like in a triangle. And we'll share the one, and then they literally hang beside each other. And then I'll put one big tarp over it. We've done that a few times. Like down in Linville Gorge in North Carolina, she's kind of creeped out that place, so we stay right beside each other. Another thing I forgot to mention under the insulation, which is a very important part, like for tent campers, is the sleeping pad. We talked about how when you lay on your sleeping bag, it smashes that insulation, your body can lose heat from conduction with the ground. Same thing with a hammock, only you lose it from convection from the air around. So, sleeping pads, there's, nowadays, I kind of went to hammock camping because I never set foot on the ground. And then, in the past 5 years or so, they really came a long way with inflatable sleeping pads. This ain't even that good of one. You can pay $200 for one if you like. This one's kind of the middle of the road. It's an inflatable, but it's also insulated. It's made by Big Agnes. It's called Aircore. It's pretty comfortable. It's a little bit narrow, but I got it because I got a really small tent.
So you actually have to inflate it yourself?
Yeah.
Nathan?
And then this one, I'll show this other one too. This one is a self-inflating. It is a little bit, they're not as expensive, but they don't loft up as much. This one will blow up to about that thick. It's a lot more comfortable than this one. This one here will keep you alive. They're both rated about 35 degrees maybe. You can also double them up. Put this one on the ground, put that on top, and you can get down a lot lower.
So while he's getting that out, I made another mistake on that. I thought a sleeping pad was to make me be more comfortable. I had no idea that they had R ratings to them and that it was also a warmth factor. So I just went out on Amazon and found a sleeping pad because I didn't know. But I guess it really makes a difference.
Yeah, the earth is gigantic and it's cold, and it wants all of your heat, and it will take it from you in the night. So that's why you got to protect yourself from the ground. This one right here, if you let it lay out, you just open the valve. It's got a foam pad inside it, and when you roll it up, it squeezes the air out, so it takes up less volume in the pad. So you have to lay this out for a while with the valve open, and it will start to fill up. This one, on the other hand, you have to blow it up. Now, most people use their mouth blowing these up, and they have no problem with doing it. But they say if you put a bunch of that humid air in there over and over, it can cause not only insulation not to work, but it can get mold in it. So, I mean, thru hikers do it all the time. They don't have any other choice. There's a couple little hacks you can do. One of them is you can use like a garbage bag. I don't know if I can attempt it today because there's wind, but sometimes I'll just take a regular garbage bag with a twist tie. I'll open up this valve, and I'll tear a little hole in the garbage bag, and I'll zip tie it on. This is a little hack you can make out of a 20-ounce pop bottle cap with a rubber hose washer inside it. You can put it over top of this. It's probably going to be a disaster in this wind. Fill the bag up like that, which usually fills up a lot more than that. You squeeze it in, and it'll fill the thing up. And then you can use this for a trash bag also.
I
actually have a thing that is something you can buy in the store that's the same purpose, but it's also used as a stuff sack.
Yeah.
You just take it, I've got it in here, you just take it and fill it with air, and then it's got something on it, and you just squeeze it into your pad. And it's done with a stuff sack, which is wonderful.
Yeah, some brands actually, the pack that they come in, it doubles as the pump. And then some of them also have a pump built into them, which those are a lot bulkier. But that pad is very important. So don't skimp on the pad, because it's your comfort and it's your warmth from the ground. Like I said, I went from a tent to a hammock because I was always sleeping on roots and rocks, and I never slept that good, so I went to a hammock. But nowadays they have all these really, really nice pads out. It kind of makes me feel. And some people just use, like a lot of these ultralight hikers, will just use a tarp. They'll just take a tarp, they'll take their sleeping pad, and set the tarp up. You can set a tarp up in multiple ways. It's the lightest option there is. It's very hard to keep away from bugs. Bugs will eat you up with bug season. Also, sometimes wind can get up underneath it if you don't have it set up. You're not going to have a whole lot of room in them, but they're the lightest option. I've never slept under just a tarp except for the hand. So, we talked about the big three a little bit. Now we're going to talk about campsite selection a little bit. When you get to a camp, first thing you want to abide by is if there's any local regulations involved. Some places make sure you stay in a designated camping spot. You can have regulations on fires. You can have regulations on the maximum party size. So taking all that into account, the next thing I look for is dead trees, widowmakers. I've made a mistake. I've got everything set up, and then I've looked up, and I'm like, oh no, there's a gigantic dead limb right over top of me. So it's either sit and think about that all night long, or just move. So check out the trees. The tree itself, like I'm hanging from, make sure they're not dead, decayed, rotting. Big dead decayed limb, maybe another tree leaning against the tree. That does happen quite frequently. People are killed by trees falling. So check that out. Another thing is possible flooding spots, like if you're sleeping in a tent. If you're close to a stream, will that stream rise very quickly? Are you in a low area like that puddle right there? You can literally fill your tent up full of water from sitting in the puddle. I camped, we done an overnight canoe trip on the side of a river one year, me and my wife. It had rained the day before. Not a whole lot. Well, we came down, we made this nice camp on this big sandbar, set up, and we was making food, and I noticed that the water just kept coming up. So I'd mark it with a stick, and I'd wait, and I'd mark it, and I'm like, oh no. Well, right behind us was this great big, like, thicket of reeds, which is almost like an impenetrable with a canoe and all your gear. I'm thinking, I hope we don't have to like pack up in the middle of the night, because I don't want to navigate this river in the dark. So I'd set my alarm for every hour, and I'd get up and I'd watch the water, and it came up within 6 feet of our tent, and then stopped. And then the next morning we were good. So, but it was a nerve-wracking night. Anyway.
Honestly, I wouldn't have thought to think about the trees and look at my site. That's a really good tip.
It's amazing. I mean, you know, if the wind kicks up at night, I mean, a tree, it happens quite frequently.
I didn't even think about that for hiking, and one day Lisa and I went into the woods and Bart grabbed her and later said, feeling too windy to be hiking today. Never even occurred to me.
Yeah. You think it's, a 1 in a million, but it does happen. Like every time we go out to work on the mountain bike trails, it seems like there's a new tree down every time we go out. Great, big, healthy trees, too. Another thing is, if you're camping in an area where there's wildlife that you should be concerned about. One of the first things I do after I look at all this other stuff, if I'm in an area where I should be bear bagging, I go ahead and I identify what tree I'm going to use, and I go ahead and I set my rope up for my bear bag, so I don't have to do it in the dark. That's another thing that's important, not only for bears, but like in the Smokies, the squirrels will get in your stuff that fast. You can't walk away from them. The squirrel will be chewing through your pack. So I hang them from the mice and the squirrels, stuff like that. I've been in an area.
You do hang your stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't happen to have that and show us how you do that.
Yeah, I can.
That'd be awesome. I really want to see that.
Yeah, we can try that. And then some spots, like in the Smokies at the designated camp spots, they'll actually have cable systems, and they tell you to hang your entire pack up. Some of the spots, the bear have like identified packs, and they'll just go grab your pack and take off with it. So they say hang your whole pack up. Don't leave it hanging from a tree, and just hang your food up. And also anything that's smelly, deodorant, toothpaste, anything like that should go in the bear bag, be hung up. Some cases I've been in areas that were just reopened after having bear problems, and I will even eat, which is not fun to do. I'll eat away from camp, and I'll go ahead and clean up. I'll hang my stuff. Then I'll come back and then we enjoy the fire, which, it's a drag. Everybody likes to eat and drink around the fire, but some of them spots, it's just not worth sitting up all night thinking, did I drop a marshmallow or something?
Do you just maybe make your fire away from your tent? How far away should you be from your tent or from where you're sleeping, do you think?
It all depends. Like, the first time I ever went to West Virginia at this place that had bear problems, I was nervous because of my first time being there. We ate like 150 yards from camp. We cleaned everything up. And then I went back, hung it all, then we went back and sat around the fire for a while. The fire is not the problem. I never saw a bear the whole time. On the way home, we saw it on the highway driving home. So, just good. Actually, we got down to Monongahela National Forest, and we went into this little ranger station. There was nobody working in it. We just drove about 4 hours, and there was a handwritten note on the desk that said, due to increased bears coming into camps in this region we were going, you may want to find another place to go. So I just drove 4 hours. I had my brother and my wife with me. So I didn't let them see this note. I just left them out. So all weekend I am nervous. I didn't tell them. I'm like taking extra precautions. And then, ironically, on the way home, I see one on the highway. Never seen one in the woods the whole time.
Which part of the Monongahela was?
There's a couple different ways.
Nathan, Paul asked, which part of the Monongahela were you in?
I was close to the Dolly Sod Group.
Okay.
Over on this other side of it. Have you ever been to?
Yeah, I've been to Dallas.
Oh, it's beautiful, ain't it?
Yeah, cranberry glades and that.
Yeah. It's kind of, Dolly Sods is, because of YouTube and everything, it's like kind of overran with people now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
A couple different ways to bear bag. In certain regions, there's one region called like the PCT method, and it's because bear had kind of figured out how to get food from the other methods, so they started hanging it in this way. It's like a one-line method. Nowadays, a lot of places want you to use the bear canister, not even hang it. You put it in the canister, and then you put it way away from camp and just sit it there, and the bear is not supposed to be in it. So there's a couple different ways, down to, I'll try it here with this raptor. So windy. Usually I'll take a stick, and I'll just wrap this around a stick or something. You can take a bag, put some rocks in it. There's several ways to do it. Just a weight. Then you'll throw it over a limb. And you want a limb that comes out away from the trunk of the tree. So you want it several feet away from the trunk of the tree, so if they go up it, they can't reach out and grab it. And also, if they was able to go out on this limb, they can't reach down and grab it. So this is my limb. Throw it over. Now you can, like if it's around here, you're not really worried about bear. You just don't want like mice to get in it. You can just pull it up, tie it around the trunk of the tree. You're fine 99% of the time. That's one way to do it. Another way is if you take, grab my food bag. Take my food bag, flip it on. Pull your food bag all the way up to the limb. And then, let's say this is 15 foot tall. Then you reach up on this line as far as you can. Then you tie a clove hitch or some other knot that you can get out better easier. I'll make a mess here. Okay. Then you bring this down. Actually, you're supposed to put it through the carabiner first. I made a mistake. So you raise it up through the carabiner, all the way to the tree. You reach up, tie the stick on. And then you let it down, and it'll grab against the stick. Now that should be, because you're looking at a 15-foot limb, by the time this goes up and hits the bag, it'll be 10 feet in the air, and this will be like 5 feet down from the limb. So this is a different skill. So hangs there all night long, and then even if they pull on this line or something, they can't get the bag. The next morning you pull all the way back up, you take the stick off, and then you can let it back down. That works a lot. Now, some people I've ran into, if it's really windy and this thing gets twisted around the stick a few times, it will not come down the tree. So at that point, you're going to have to try to break the line or something. I don't know. It's never happened to me. It can happen. But if you just tie a simple clove hitch or something, usually you can get it off pretty easily. Lower it back down. That's one way of doing it. Another way, which is if you have a buddy, and they have a food bag, you can raise one up. You can tie the other one on. And then I usually take all my leftover line, I stick it in the other bag. And then I take a long stick and I push this one up till they're even. And they're both like 10 feet off the ground. And then the next morning you just go grab the stick and you push up on one and it'll let the other one down and you can take them off that way. That's pretty simple enough too. There's another thing that's kind of popular they call an earth sack. It's a Kevlar bag. You put your food in and you tie it around the trunk of the tree, and they say the bear can't rip it open. But it can smash all your food up. You can get the flavor of it. So I don't really see what the whole advantage of it is. I mean, yeah, it didn't get your food, but it tasted your food and it worked your food. I don't know. So now all these things that could go wrong, you're probably not even looking forward to backpacking anymore.
It always tells a better story if it screws up.
Well, I think that's the thing is you hear so much about doing it that you want to know what you need to do and how to do it and all that.
It's a work in progress. You're going to say you go out the first time and a few things go wrong. Just make notes. change it. This gear might not have worked. This gear did work. You know, it's kind of something to play with. Now, water, of course, is essential. It's very heavy. So, you know, a lot of people don't want to carry a whole lot of water for a whole weekend on them. Sometimes you have to if you're in an arid place or if you're a place where you're not supposed to treat the water. What I do most of the time is this pack has a removable sleeve for a hydration pack in it. And I find that I drink more often on the trail if I use this. You can also, with this pack, this bottle's kind of big, but it has a spot where you can put a water bottle here. I find it always falls off. Some people will carry it back here. It's hard to get to. I have to get my buddy to get it, so therefore I just don't drink as much. So if I have room in the pack, I'll take my hydration pack. It just makes it easier. Now, if you don't want to carry all the water, and you have the means to treat water at camp or on the trail, there's several options. Sometimes I'll take this. It's called a dromedary bag. It's just a bulk water bag. You fill up in a creek, or you can fill it up with clean water. I would usually just fill this up with dirty water in the creek, and then I filter it. Like if I know I'm going to be camping up on a ridge, and I want to take a bunch of water up there, the last creek I come to before I go up there, I'll fill this up. I'll carry it to the top with me. So there's a bunch of options to filter these days. This is kind of a more of an old school. It's a pump. This is a good company, but you can see how bulky it is. It has one line you stick into the creek or wherever, then a clean line that goes into your container. And then you have to pump it. It pressurizes the water, puts it through this big filter, and then but this makes really good water. It has a charcoal filter in it in addition to the filter, so it really tastes good. But once this is full of water for the weekend, it will hold a few ounces of water. It weighs like 10 ounces on its own. And the element is only good for about 500 gallons. And then you have to change it, and the element alone is like $40. So a lot of people have been going to the Sawyer filters. There's several different brands making them. This is called a Sawyer Mini. There's also the regular Sawyer. And they call it the squeeze system. This is the smallest size bag they make. This is a 16 ounce. They make a 32 and a 64. You can fill this bag up, simply squeeze it into your container, or this is the same threads as most water bottles. So you can fill a water bottle up and you can drink right from it. The Sawyer Mini, these are good for like 100,000 gallons. So you will break it or lose it before this thing runs out. They will get slow. If you're in an area that has really dirty water, they'll slow down. But it comes with like a syringe to back flush them, which will help them out tremendously. And then once you return home, you can clean them out with like a really light bleach solution. That's a Mini. I used to carry the Mini a lot. I started going to the regular just because it has a faster flow rate. You don't have to wait around as long. And I also, instead of using the squeeze method, I use a gravity filter system. Oh. Yeah. I keep everything in here. The last thing, it's not very fun to sit and squeeze that water because it can take a while. So while I'm doing other camp chores, I'll go ahead and set this thing up. I also have a little adapter with a little hose that I can click it right into my camelback so I can fill my camelback. I fill this up with water, hang it from a tree, and it creates a pressure head which does the squeezing for you. You don't have to worry about it. That's what I'll use. Another method you can do is chemical treatment. I've had these for a long time. I've never even used them. I'll carry them sometimes on a hike just in case I run out of water. You put like one tablet in, you have to wait like 20 minutes or so, and then the other tablet neutralizes it. Sounds sketchy to me, but it will disinfect your water. And about all of the water. There's also UV light treatments you can get. It's like a little flashlight. The UV light is supposed to kill all the bacteria. Another, for me, yeah, UV light kills it, but like if I'm out somewhere, I don't want a chance to get sick. But they say they work really well. I just never tried them. And here's a kind of a fun thing is stoves. Everybody wants to look at the stoves. I use what nowadays like about the most popular one. Here's my cook kit right here. Inside my cook kit I have a lighter, coffee mug, titanium long-handled spoon for reaching into those food container bags, which are really long. And then I just went to this cook pot recently because it's a little smaller than the one I had, and it fits on my bicycle a little bit better. But it's a titanium. Inside it is, I'll get it out. That's my fuel bottle and my stove. And all the nest's really good inside this, so it takes up less space. This kind of fuel, it's called Isopro. Different brands have different names. It's an isobutane propane mix. It's very convenient. It's clean. The problem is you can't find this everywhere. Is one of the things with it, and it doesn't work really well below 30 degrees. These type stoves require the gas to come up, and then you burn the gas. So the colder it is, the less of it turns into gas. So sometimes I'll keep it in my pocket in the morning or something that's cold, and I'll put hot hands on it. I've even stuck it next to the campfire, which don't do, because if you forget about it, it'll be bad.
Nathan, is that one of the things that you can't get shipped to you either? You have to pick it up in store.
Probably.
Yeah, because that was an issue with me one time. We needed it, and we needed it now, and they will not mail it.
This is a small 4-ounce size. You can also buy them in an 8-ounce, and in Walmart, stuff sells them in a 15-ounce. I have a refill valve for these, so I take the bigger ones and I top this one off. You'll run into where you'll use most of this, and you're like, I'm going to go on a trip, but I don't trust having enough, so you'll leave it, you'll buy another one. Before long, you have 5 of them that are halfway empty. So I just take all those and put them back into one.
Why doesn't it work in temperatures lower than 30? It won't light, or it just really won't heat your...
It relies on the vapor coming off the liquid. So the colder the liquid, the less it vaporizes. So that's the problem. Now there's another type of stove I'm going to go into in a minute, which is a remote type stove. And a remote stove has a burner, it has a hose, and then a fuel bottle. Now some of them use these containers, but what they do is they invert them so the pressure pushes the liquid out. It burns the liquid. So they're not affected by cold. And then some remote stoves use white gas or gasoline, but I'll go into them in a minute. Anyway, see if I can get the lights red.
Nathan, where did you get the adapter to be able to fill this ball?
You can get them off of Amazon. If you look up
company? Do you know the company name or
no.
no?
Most of them, I think, are probably from China because I don't know if it's actually legal to fill these up. All it is a kind of an adapter. It screws into one. I'll take the one that I'm filling, stick it in the freezer, get it super cold. And then the one I'm moving the gas from, I get it kind of warm. And then they transfer real easy. But you got to make sure you put it on like a cooking scale, and make sure you're not putting too much in it, which is, it's hard to put too much in. These are really easy to use. You just screw it on, turn it on just a little bit. And then, there it is. That's why people like them, is they're super convenient. The fuel is easy to carry. It's clean. Another one is an alcohol stove. Alcohol stoves are super quiet. You can make a bunch of them. These are made out of pop cans. This is called a Fancy Feast stove. It's made out of a Fancy Feast cat food can. Super light. They don't weigh anything. This is made out of Axe body spray container. Also, there's a commercial available ones. This is my dad's system he uses. This is all one system you can get. The alcohol burner goes inside, and your cook pot goes on top. This one has a heat sink on it, so it really grabs all the heat from the flame, transfers it right in the pot. It really increases the cook time. This one's kind of nice because if you don't use all the alcohol, you can just put this on it and you can save it. Now, alcohol stoves, they're fun to make and mess around with, but I find taking them out personally, you have to carry a fuel bottle, you have to pour it in. It's kind of messy. This alcohol, they burn denatured alcohol, which you can find like in the paint section at Walmart, or you can buy this. It's like a fuel system treatment for a car. Just get the yellow bottle, don't get the red bottle. The bad thing about it, in sunlight, it burns almost completely invisible. So you can have it spilled out, and you can have a fire and not even realize it. That's why I think California, you're not even supposed to use alcohol stoves because they've had fires get out. So a lot of people like them because they're super quiet in the morning. They also work pretty well in the cold. After the alcohol gets going, it seems not to be effective. These ones here, this one's made out of an iced tea can, two of them together. It's got these jets. All you do is pour the alcohol inside. You put your pot on top. It takes a few minutes to get going, but once it heats itself, the alcohol the fumes jet out of these. It looks just like a gas burner on your stove at the house. I'm not even going to attempt it today. It's clean. This is another brand that's very popular. It's MSR. It's called Pocket Rocket. It's been around for a long, long time. It does the same exact thing.
Swipe it.
Like that. One of these, an 8-ounce container like this, you could probably use for a few weeks and not run out. So that's why I carry the smaller 4-ounce. It's just less bulky, less weight. But this one's a really good one.
It's laying over here
Can
on
you
the
put your
ground.
dad's pot on top of that?
What is it?
Can you put your dad's cooking pot on top of that?
Yeah, it can go on there. My cook pot, the one I've used for a long, long time, I got stuff everywhere here.
You got it set over here on this line.
Yeah, there it is. This is the one that I used for years. It goes with the stove that I have. And it has the same heat sink on it. This is an anodized aluminum pot. It's got a little tiny bowl. And it's also got that heat sink, which really speeds up the cooking time. My little titanium one here doesn't have it, and this will boil water a lot faster than this one will. This one will boil water so fast that if you start your water and then you get your food, the water will be boiling before you get your food ready. Everything.
Have you ever used the jet boil?
Yeah, I was going to mention the Jet Boil. It's a new company out. No, they've been out for a little while. It's called Jet Boil. Really super efficient. It's got a pot that's wrapped in neoprene, and it's got a heat sink on it with its own proprietary burner that clicks in, and it is super efficient also. They're a little bit bulky. They're kind of big, but they're super popular. People really like them.
So even the small, like, containers, I'm just kind of curious. I feel like I'd be nervous about running out. Like, they'll burn for a long time.
The alcohol stoves?
Well, yeah, I guess the one you carry. You said it.
Even
You
the
get
small
lots of
detail.
Oh, yeah. This right here, these boil water so fast. Like if you're just making dehydrated meals, where you're just boiling water, you're not simmering for a long time, this will probably last you over a week. That's making 2 meals a day. With this pot, it'll boil enough for a meal in probably a minute and a half. So that's why I've never ran out with this one. Now, if I was on a through hike and I was a week between you might want to take it a little bit bigger. Or if you're doing simmering stuff, like a lot of people like those more sides, which actually have to cook for a while, you might want a bigger one. A weekend warrior or something like that, you'll never go to one. But this size is kind of hard to find. You usually have to go to REI or something to get the smaller one.
What do you recommend for food?
For food, there's a company called Packet Gourmet, which is a small company out of Texas. I really like their stuff. I don't think I have any of them today. They've got a wide range of meals. They're usually a little bit more complex than just your normal, like Backpacker's Pantry or all the other ones that you can get. This one here, you just put water in it and you just wait. Some of the ones I mentioned before, that they take a few more steps, but the quality of the food is really good. And that's called Packet Gourmet. I really like them. There's a few other companies I like. Yeah, there's a Jet Boil right there. If you want to see it. You can see how
Everything's in that.
they maximize, like this right here with a little fuel container, it lasts forever. It's really good for cold weather.
And that's got everything.
It's got everything nested inside there.
Fuel can.
And they'll have your food already open and ready because it'll boil it that fast.
How much does something like that run roughly?
Actually, yeah, at the store the other day, I just looked at it, it was like 120, 150. I actually found this one after the
Dump?
Yeah, the dump. I gave like $50 for it.
Next time you see that, look.
Pick them up.
Yeah. And the nice thing about this one is the little window there on the side, it actually changes color when it gets to boil. The little symbol turns red, so you don't even have to have the top off of it. Yeah.
That's about all I have for the stoves. I talked about some luxury items that people take. I usually take like a small saw with me, because sometimes I'll enjoy a fire. I'm usually by myself. Sometimes I won't. Sometimes I just have a little candle set up or whatever, and I'll just eat and go to bed. But that is my stool here. This is kind of a heavy one, but I really like it. It's so convenient to be able to stop on the trail, just have a place to sit. That easy. Usually eat something right now. But I don't know. Like I said before, I'm not an ultralight packer, so I take a few different luxury items like that. A pillow. I'll take the pillow. Just inflating them. Other than that, I was going to talk about navigation a little bit, but that's such a broad topic, like map reading and navigation. just touching on it for a minute would do it justice. It could be a whole other class. But there are things these days for safety, like if you're really nervous or worried, like a spot receiver, a GPS receiver, it can send out a signal no matter if there's cell signal or not. So you can get to camp, if you're by yourself, you can send a loved one your location, I am here. So if something would happen, they know where you were, they know where to come find you. I don't have one, but I've been thinking about getting one, but I just haven't. It'd make my wife sleep better at night. I'm not too worried, but it'd make her sleep better. Well, that's about all I have. Is there any more questions? I mean,
Nathan, on your phone, what GPS apps do you like for this area?
I like an app called Avenza Maps. Avenza, yeah. I use it. You individually download a map for each individual area you're going to. I have Wayne National Forest. I have Shawnee Forest. There's a really super good one for Red River Gorge. I have one for the Smokies areas. It's really interactive. It shows you where you are. You can plot points and add photos on there. Like if you're out hiking around and you say this would be a really cool camp spot or something, you can plot it really easily, and it seems to work really well in this area. So that's one of my favorites, but that's not the only one I use. It's called Twinsie.
Have you ever hiked our backpacking trail here?
Yeah. When I was in 5th grade, that was the first place I ever backpacked. My dad took me. We did a 2-night, 3-day. We got soaking wet. We burned our boots up on the fire. We tried to dry them out. I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with it. Back then, it was like the whole path was just single track. And you would go out, and you felt like you was just in the middle of nowhere. Now, a lot of it is widened. They use a skid steer. It just kind of lost a lot of its appeal to me. But yeah, I've done the whole thing so far.
Some of the campsites have water on them.
Yeah.
Have they just come and dumped water in, and is it safe to drink out of those?
I usually drink it. It's a underground cistern that they have,
Okay.
and it's usually slightly uphill from the spout. And they'll have a field like poured up there. They usually bring a truck in and they fill it.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem drinking it. Some people will filter it also, but I've never had a problem myself. And I think all the camps except for 6 have water. 6 doesn't. The 6 has 2 creeks coming in, so it's always wet there. It's a good question. Anything else? Also, if people are having, like I said, I'm not an expert in this. I just like to do it. But if people would have questions or anything, you can get hold of me through Connects, or I'll give you my email or something. I'm not knowledgeable on all of it, but I might be able to steer you in that direction. And if it's about a trail or something in this area, I'm pretty knowledgeable on it too. So I appreciate having all you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan.